to be doing the bottom 10 the worst SpongeBob episodes. So the last video I posted was my favorite episodes of SpongeBob. And today I'm going to be doing my least favorite episodes. So let's get started. Number 10 is a Little Yellow Book. So this episode used to originally not be on the list like a really long time ago. And now this episode is on the list. So why is it on the list, you ask? So let me tell you. When you search up the definition of hypocrisy in the dictionary, there will be a link to this episode. You want to know why? Because the townsfish in this episode are really big hypocrites. So Squidward, he reads SpongeBob's diary and all, and so do the townspeople. And once Squidward, gets caught or whatever, the townsfish, they go against Squidward, even though they were reading it too. Now that's infuriating. And here's another reason why this episode sucks. So this episode managed to make Squidward unlikable, after all of the torture stuff, all the torture episodes that happened, and some of which may be on the list, I don't know, you might find out. And yeah, so after all the Squidward torture episodes, Squidward becomes unlikable. Are you kidding me? It makes the one person who gets tortured throughout the whole show unlikable. Are you kidding? So yeah, this episode sucks. And you want to know another thing? This episode is literally the same thing as Fools in April, except Fools in April wasn't hypocritical, and Squidward actually felt sorry for what he did in that episode. Here, he doesn't feel sorry. He's just a jerk, and I hate this episode. Number 9 is That Splinter. Oh boy. Oh, everybody knew this would be on here at some point. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room. This episode is disgusting. All it is just a cringe episode. Literally, it's like face freeze or whatever. It's just a cringe episode. And you want to know something that sucks? The show can actually do cringe comedy correctly. If you want to see an episode where they do cringe comedy correctly, go watch Sing a Song of Patrick, because that episode actually does cringe comedy correctly. But now in this episode, literally the whole episode is a SpongeBob Splinter getting worse and worse as the episode plays out. And it's really disgusting. And here's another thing. Patrick in this episode is just awful. Like, he's really awful. And apparently he has a foot fetish too. Great. So yeah, everybody knows why this episode is on the list, and I honestly don't want to go into further detail, or else I'm going to vomit because of the stupid Splinter. Number 8 is Atlantis Panties. So, to be honest, this episode is going to get its own review eventually. I really want to review this episode to its full, I guess. Well, I'm going to briefly talk about this. This episode is the same thing as the Splinter, except it's the Splinter to your ears. Instead of it being 11 minutes, this episode is 44 minutes of awful music. That's enough I need to say. Oh, and what about the plot? Oh yeah, SpongeBob and Patrick and everybody. They go to Atlantis. For what? Why do they go to Atlantis? To see a bubble that doesn't pop. Yeah, that's very stupid. Like, really stupid, and the plot just sucks. And you want to know something? This episode didn't need to be 44 minutes long. And to be honest, it was originally going to be 11 minutes. But because of Nickelodeon, it had to be 44 minutes of this stupid music. All the songs suck. They're so bad. And, yeah. And all the characters also flanderized, and they all have one dimensions. So this episode is just really annoying. The plot sucks. The pacing sucks. There's a lot of filler, which is like all the songs, which is like 3/4 of the whole episode. Every single song sucks except for maybe the Plankton one. Like, this episode, this quote-unquote special, sucks. You thought that TV movie was bad? Well, why don't you watch Truth or Square, which is somehow even worse? So I'm going to give a little rant in this episode because, I'm going to be doing a full review of this eventually. So yeah, this episode is one of the worst specials and definitely the worst TV movie of the whole show. So here's why this episode is so abominably bad. It is so bad. So first off, the plot. Like 10 minutes in, the plot finally kicks in. And you want to know the plot? Oh, let me tell you. SpongeBob and Patrick and the gang, they get locked in the freezer and they have to find the way out of the Krusty Krab for 44 minutes. Yep, they get trapped in a freezer and they have to try to find their way out for 44 minutes. That's the plot for 44 freaking minutes? Yeah, I'm surprised too. Because you want to know what? This type of plot, it can't even fill an 11-minute episode. It can do a short at best. And you want to know something with this episode? 30, maybe even more minutes of this episode are all filler. Just all of it is filler. You want to know something? Literally, the whole episode is filler. So SpongeBob and Patrick and Mr. Krabs and all those people, they get locked in a freezer in the air vents. Do you know what they do in the air vents? They literally do nothing. They don't try to escape. They don't try to do anything. They just go around throughout the vents. And you want to know something else? That's not the worst part of this crap. Literally, Patchy is so bad. Why was Patchy even in this episode? All the Patchy segments consisted of him talking to random celebrities. Does this have anything to do with SpongeBob? No, it doesn't. This is just stupid. And the quote-unquote climax for the Patchy segment is just stupid. It's him meeting SpongeBob, then falling back because he met SpongeBob. That's stupid. This whole episode is stupid, and it is really insulting for 10 years. It is one of the worst. Oh wow, would you look at that? Would you look at that? Another special came. And this is the second worst of the whole show. This episode is Whatever Happened to SpongeBob? Yeah, literally. Or as many people call it, Who Bob What Pants. This episode is so bad. And you know what? I'm just not going to talk about it that much. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that the plot is awful. While it hasn't really been done in SpongeBob before, we've seen it in like other stuff before. So SpongeBob, he gets amnesia. That's like the whole plot. And you want to know why? Because everybody calls him Idiot Boy. That's literally the whole plot. And they don't really do a lot with it. The only, I guess, notable thing is the bubble climax, which is kind of cool, I guess. But not really. It's the best thing that happened in this episode, okay? But now let's go on to another thing. This episode is just off. It's really mean-spirited. Like, the jokes, they don't really go anywhere. The plot is mean-spirited. Like, the first, 5 minutes of this episode is SpongeBob getting called Idiot Boy for the first 5 minutes. And considering that each episode is 22 minutes, 5 minutes out of 22, that's almost a fourth of the special. That's just bad. That is awful. So yeah, almost 25% of the special is just mean-spiritedness. And also, go to later on the episode, we get the most disgusting face in the whole show. Yes, even worse than the Splinter. It's all just bad. And you know what? I can't really describe why this episode sucks. If you really want a better representation of why this episode sucks, just watch a Mr. Renner's animated atrocity on it. Because, yeah, this episode is so bad. Well, yeah, one-course meal is number 5. It is not number 1, so, yeah, that's one thing. Well, on my Instagram account, at sml.reviews_, I reviewed this episode. One-course meal, so yeah. If you want to know why I hate it, just go there. or listen to what everybody else has to say about this crap, so yeah. Well, I'm just gonna give a brief description of this episode. So, Plankton tries to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Again. And then, apparently, he's afraid of Pearl, despite Plankton seeing Pearl before not being afraid. That's dumb. And the rest of the episode is just Plankton torture. That's really it. Yeah. And because this is definitely a kid's show, they thrown suicide gags as a plot point. Really, I mean, here it's worse than it is in the other episode that addresses suicide. Yeah, I guess. Well, here, this is actually part of the plot, and yeah. So overall, this episode is just really mean-spirited, it's torture at its worst, and it's just really bad. Honestly, I don't really have that much to say because what everybody else said is perfect, and I don't want to be redundant. Number 4 is Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. So this episode used to be at number 3. So this episode, if I'm being honest, it has the most flaws of any episode of the whole show. And I'm not going to go through every single one of them because that's what a review is for, and I'm going to be giving this episode its own individual review soon. So I'm going to go say why this episode is really bad. So I'm going to say, it's a Patrick's a Prick episode mixed with a Squidward Torture episode. You mix those two things, which you really shouldn't, and then you get this abomination. So first, Patrick, he's being really irritating, actually, and he eats Squidward's ticket. You want to know why? Oh yeah, because it's stupid, and the writers apparently think that stupidity warrants everything. No, it doesn't. It just makes you look like an idiot. And then we move on to SpongeBob, and apparently goes to the concert with Squidward. Okay, that's fine. And then we move on, and SpongeBob is being really annoying and really ignorant. His ignorance and annoyance is just really irritating. So apparently the concert is supposed to be like this chill vibe, and SpongeBob treats it like it's a rock concert. Are you kidding me? It's just awful. It's just awful seeing the way he is. And then apparently on the concert, apparently Patrick shows up for some reason, and then he goes just to eat Squidward and SpongeBob's backstage pass. And apparently, yeah, that's really, really retarded. And then later on in the episode, he goes on the stage because he thinks it's a freaking fast food place. And then he gets praised for it. Are you kidding me? And then because of logic, SpongeBob and Patrick, they get kicked out. That's the whole episode, and it is so bad. You thought Patrick was bad, and whatever the episode is, and Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom? Well, would you look at this? This is a worst Patrick episode ever. You want to know something? In some episodes, like Yours, Mine, and Mine, he's only torturing one person. But here, it's torturing the whole world. Are you kidding? This episode, oh no. So first off, everything happens in this episode because of Patrick. So apparently Patrick thinks that a time machine is a vending machine. Again, stupidity doesn't warrant everything. And then later on the episode, no, that's not the worst thing. And then we go back in time, and then he eats all the tartar sauce, which, stopped Man Ray from taking over the world. So Man Ray, he becomes dictator of the world. And let me say something, Patrick, I despise you with a passion. So let me say this. Your stupidity has put the world at stake. Okay, yeah. And after Man Ray becomes dictator, they go to the present and they see Man Ray as dictator. And they go to the Krusty Krab, where apparently Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, they address their deaths seriously. And this brings up the bad writing flaw. So apparently this episode has no idea whether to be serious or whether to be comical. And it ends up being neither. You want to know why? because them addressing death seriously and putting, the rest of the episode just does not work. Mixing seriousness and whatever and a goofiness just doesn't work. It's just really, really bad writing. And you want to know something? Patrick doesn't care at all. Are Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy their heroes? Because apparently not. Apparently not to Patrick. So this episode is the worst Patrick's a Prick episode because he puts the whole world at stake and not just one person. This was my least favorite episode for a while, and it's only number 2 here because you'll see what number 1 is eventually. So, yeah, I'm gonna describe this episode. First, whoever it is, SpongeBob, he stalks Squidward, and that's the beginning. It's really annoying. And then to get Squidward's attention, he goes and digs up a ball for him to crash. And then Squidward, he goes and lands in jellyfish fields. And he gets surrounded by jellyfish. And SpongeBob starts singing obnoxiously while Squidward is getting zapped by the jellyfish. And SpongeBob makes this really, really awful line. Well, I guess I have a captive audience now. That line is one of the worst lines I've ever seen from any cartoon ever, because this episode just shows that SpongeBob, Squidward is pinned down by jellyfish, and you're letting this happen just because you want to sing your stupid song? Are you kidding me? No, this episode is just awful. And apparently because of logic, SpongeBob gets a part in the end. Yeah, this episode is a worse Squidward Torture episode, and it was my least favorite episode. Now, I don't consider it to be the worst, but yeah, this episode is number 2. Oh boy, oh no. Number 1 is SpongeBob, Youre Fired. Even though I said Atlantis, SquarePants was my least favorite episode when I was younger, well, I must have forgot about this abomination because this was my least favorite episode also. You want to know why? Well, actually for different reasons. Now I hate it for a number of reasons. The main one being that this episode just doesn't fit the atmosphere of the show. You want to know why? Because SpongeBob, he gets fired for a nickel, I mind you. Y'all get to that. He gets fired because of a stupid nickel. And SpongeBob, the first half is just him crying. And he literally forgets everything in his life. Like, doesn't he go jellyfishing with Patrick? Isn't that something a part of his life? How about karate sparring with Sandy? Is that another thing that's a part of his life? Apparently not, because apparently here the Krusty Krab is literally his whole life, which it's not. That's part of laziness, because the writers, they don't even know SpongeBob's full characteristics. They just, say that, oh, the Krusty Krab being a fry cook is literally his whole life. No, it's not. And then we move on to the second third of the episode, and this part just mocks unemployment, and it says it's a life choice, which, no, it's not. And I'm actually astounded that the writers actually did this. Actually, I'm not that surprised. In Who Bob What Pants, they made that really bad joke about the homeless, so yeah. I'm kind of not surprised, and that's the whole first half. They mock unemployment. It's disgusting, really. So yeah. And now we move on to the next part. The filler in this episode. SpongeBob applying to a job is literally all filler because you know what the ending's gonna be. And now let me talk about the ending for a sec. So apparently the Krusty Krab goes into shambles because SpongeBob's not working there. Hey, literally this whole thing happened in Who Bob What Pants. This episode is Who Bob What Pants. This is literally a rehash of Who Bob What Pants, which you really shouldn't do. And also, SpongeBob got fired twice before this episode. Or really 3 times if you consider Who Bob What Pants, where he really didn't get fired, he just left. got fired in Karate Choppers, and he got fired in Model Sponge. And both of those episodes handled SpongeBob being fired a lot better than this abomination. So yeah, and let's talk about the ending for a minute. So yeah, SpongeBob, because of the Krusty Krab being in shambles, they apparently rehire SpongeBob. Hooray. Yeah, we totally didn't call that ending. Yep. So this episode I consider to be the worst episode of the whole show. So what are your least favorites, guys? Tell me in the comments below what your least favorites are.